there are just times where you got nothing more to give and you just need a little space. Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories. Welcome back to So Here's My Story. I'm Jody.
I'm Elliot.
And in today's story, we learn when not to talk to Elliot. No, that's not true.
And end of the episode.
No, we went into some really great conversations about how to set boundaries around when you're game for a business conversation, when you're not game for a business conversation, how to, the blur between social and business, just lots of good stuff to get you through, especially some of these upcoming holiday parties and whatnot. And but before we jump into that story, if you have not gotten our special bonus episode, or if you would like to get the link to get into the Facebook group, text the word story to 345-345. And while you're at it, tell someone about the show.
So here's my story. I was at the Ravens game, and every once in a while I go to the Ravens games and I sit in a client's box, and it's one of the luxury boxes, and I've gotten spoiled, and I love this. And I know the people who are there, and I walk in and like, Elliot, not quite like normal, and cheers, but I know the people, and I have a great time.
So it's both fancy
that.
Pantsy and comfy.
It's all of those things. It's a pretty good sized departure from when I used to go with my dad and he used to bring a blanket and a thermos of hot chocolate and sit on the cold in Memorial Stadium.
See, that's how I think of football, though. But go ahead.
And that is how I think of it, and I love it. But anyway, so I was at the box, but one of the people that just greeted me really enthusiastically was enthusiastic, I'm sure, not just because of the pleasure of my company, but because he really needed to talk to me about this thing that we were working on.
So business stuff.
Business stuff. Business stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people that says, hey, I will not discuss business at a personal event or at a game or this is my time and at 5 o'clock I check out.
That's definitely not how I think of you.
That's not how I am. I like what I do and I'm interested in it and all this stuff. But at this particular time, I was with Nikki. I just wanted to watch the game. I just wanted to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I like where this is going. Go ahead.
It was going to be a great game, and it turned out to be a great game, particularly because the Ravens just stomped. But I was just looking forward to that, particularly because
that was the mindset you were in.
Yeah, because this was on a Sunday and all day Saturday. I had been working, so this was a break.
Ooh, okay.
And I didn't want to say something to him because A, I didn't want to be off-putting, but B, I also didn't want to create that vibe that, oh, wait a minute, Elliott's only going to be, you can only talk to Elliot when he's on the clock Monday through Friday, right? 8 to 5.
Well, it creates a rule that it seems to create a rule that you don't actually have.
Right, I know.
Except you do today. And
correct. Correct. And so it got me thinking about the upcoming holidays because we're, of course, right around Thanksgiving.
Right.
And as you know, my sister works for me, and I've got, I've always been, not always, but for most of my professional career, I've been around family. And so whether they're clients or whether they're my family as lawyers in the firm, and I've been trying to figure out why I was bothered on Sunday when I can't even codify my own rules about when to talk about business, when not to talk about business. And so I've been thinking about that in the context of Thanksgiving and holidays.
So I'm not 100% sure you'll have to expand a little bit when we get to that, but I want to stick on this first. I'm not quite following is the leap to Thanksgiving, so don't.
Well, the leap to Thanksgiving is simply that that's personal. I will tell you now. Thanksgiving is a personal thing. It's a family thing.
Right.
But I've always had family and business mixed up together. I have clients that I represent. Okay. I've been in business with family before. And so if I had a codified rule that says there will be no discussion of business at family gatherings,
sure,
then there would be huge lulls in conversation because we always talk about business and at family gatherings. So what I was just saying is that with one of the biggest family gatherings of the year coming up for many people, I don't think that I'm alone in the blurring of the family and the business lines with the guest list.
Yeah, and I'll expand it one layer even further. Even if you do not spend Thanksgiving with people whom you also do business with all year long, the topic of how do I control what we do and do not talk about, I feel like
that seems to have particular resonance at this point.
Going to be somewhat universal. So okay. So back to the original story, because I love this so much, because I am also not a person who has really strong boundaries around that. I actually know a coach who's incredibly good at what she does. And she has these rules in general she's like, I don't talk about personal things with clients. We only talk about business.
Oof,
and that is literally the opposite of, I don't even know what that means. What does that look like? How can you talk about business and not address personal things? To me, they're just one big blurry human that has, different perspectives on different things. Plus, quick side note, if you're a crappy communicator at work, you're probably a crappy communicator at home. Like, it's like you don't just have like this different person, you bring one to the other. Anyway, I digress. So I feel you on that, because there are times where people want to jump into a conversation with me about something and I'm just not in the mood. And it's so much harder to set a boundary when you're not sure what boundary you're setting than if I do have a clear boundary on something like she does, like, oh, no. I don't talk about personal things. That's very easy to put a little fence around that. Whereas your version of it always reminds me of those, like, on Facebook, it'll say, make this my temporary profile pic.
Yes, that's
and
exactly
then it will just like revert back to the normal rule. It's like you want this like sort of temporary Elliot face of like,
I want a temporary profile. I want to walk into a room and have a temporary profile pic.
Right. That then when that moment has passed, we'll go back to the normal rules of you can talk to me about anything, anytime, and I will. Okay. So a couple things on that. One, we could go down a whole conversation, but I want to stick on the setting boundaries piece about how much that absolutely has to do with energy management, I think. When I feel that need for like a temporary profile pic in a moment, it's usually because I am depleted for one reason or another, whether that's actually sleep or whether that's the fact that I've been like pouring blood transfusions into other people for, all day, every day. Or in your case, you'd already worked a 6-day week. And if I'm not mistaken, weren't you traveling a bunch? I mean, you had an intense week last week. You needed an off moment. Right. And so you just didn't have a lot to give in that moment. So if we were going to go into the why of it, I think it's actually pretty simple. Is there just times where you got nothing more to give and you just need a little space? So then there is this question of how do you communicate that without accidentally setting some new rule that doesn't apply of like, don't talk to me about business things at games. I will tell you one trick that I have used is I don't even make it about the thing. I will just say something like, oh, let me tell you, you are not going to get my best neurons today. I just sort of cop to the, I ain't all here. Yeah. Like, I don't have a lot. I would love to talk to you about this. I just like today doesn't feel like a good day. And then I'm not making it about the Ravens game, because that, I think if you separate those variables, if you're like, we're at a game and then it can be extrapolated to Jody doesn't like to talk about business things at Ravens games, when that's not the case.
No, it's not the case. But I will say that I actually tried it, probably not that artfully, but I said to one who was talking to me, I said,
"Did you just go blah, blah, blah."
Well, I said, I got to tell you, I'm just not focused. I'm just, whatever. He goes, no, I completely understand. How about if I call you after you get home?
Oh my, no.
I was thinking, and at that point I did say, well, why don't we just touch base tomorrow morning, which is Monday. Why don't we just touch base Monday morning? I'll have everything in front of me. I'll have, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't a huge thing, but it did have me worried about, I didn't want to set a rule that I don't follow, because I often do go in and say, hey, how about that thing? Or do you believe this? Or whatever. And I also didn't want to be off-putting, to be insulting about it. And so it got me thinking about, well, maybe it's a rule about either who initiates the conversation or that it has to be more subtle. I think part of it was that I was put off by feeling attacked as soon as I walked into the room.
So interesting question though, because and I don't I don't know the answer to this, but would you have felt attacked if you were just in a different energetic space? Like if you were refreshed and renewed and you hadn't worked all day Saturday and you hadn't had a crazy intense week and you were just kind of like normal everyday Elliot, would it have felt the same?
I think I would have perceived the attack, but it wouldn't have bothered me. I would be like, because I would think, wow, I would just kind of go back a step or whatever, and then I could get into it. But here I was like,
yeah, because you didn't have the whatever, like the. I
didn't have my shields up.
You didn't have your shield, and you didn't have the energy to like hit the button to raise the shield. I mean, it's a certain kind of exhaustion of where you're just like, oh, yeah. So I
think that's it. I think that there's a different way to approach business discussions depending upon the setting. So if I have a meeting with somebody, of course, if we're scheduled to have a meeting and they want to dive right into it and they don't want to talk about their weekend or the movie they saw on Netflix, I'm perfectly fine with that. We have a meeting, we're going to start, so let's start. That's fine. But if there is a different context, if there's a Ravens game, if there's a Thanksgiving dinner, if there's a meeting on the golf course or whatever it is, then I think that there's a different energy to as soon as you pull up in your golf cart going, oh, so what do you think the other side's going to do now that we've sent out the contract? And what do you think? There's a different way to approach it. There
is, but here's where I get stuck on this, is that you are struggling to codify the differences between your things. And so for there to be actual rules that are somehow at that point, because I cannot tell you how often I hear someone complain about somebody doing something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would that's not on my list of things to not say or do or not, like, I never thought about that's like, I constantly feel it's like, oh, is that wow, pretty sure I've been that person, which is kind of my nightmare, but all the more reason that I think what is more useful is having this skill set to not somehow decide on your own what everybody else's rules should be, but to be really clear on your own and have the skills to communicate them in the moment in a way that feels right.
Maybe so, but I don't think I can walk into the Ravens game, have somebody approach me about a contract and go, hey, I need some foreplay first.
Well, fair enough. I mean, I wouldn't stop you from trying. I would love to be there to watch that happen. But what you can do though is let's stick with that for a second. So let's say you weren't exhausted, you were happy to talk about it, but you wanted to kind of connect with them first before that. Then you could say, I'm just sort of spitballing here, but you could say oh, hey, happy to talk about that. Give me, tell me a little bit, how's your week going? You can still control that conversation to make it feel the way you need to feel it. I really struggle with some way that that person is other people are supposed to know my nuanced rules because that means I'm supposed to know the rules of every human I come in contact with. And that feels really daunting.
Well, no, that's true. Although there are certain rules that you're expected to assume with people you come into contact with. If you can't read them, if you don't know them well enough, you're expected to assume it. I'm just curious whether the either no business, which I don't think is applicable, or
especially because this is a business box. It is a
it's
box.
A client's
now,
box.
Granted, it's not.
They're friends and all that stuff, but yes, it's a client's box.
It's not your high school friends that got together and have a box for the game,
which is true.
It has fair. A little bit of a business fence around it, at least in context.
Yes, and certainly according to the IRS, there is a business. There's a business fence.
Apparently,
around
not anymore.
Apparently, we were talking about the deductibility of sports tickets, but still, that's also fair.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this mixing of business and social, because obviously it's a Ravens game. It's on a weekend. You're not in a conference room somewhere talking about this, whatever's going on. But at the same time, yes, you're with the chief operating officer of the organization and the CFO, and I'm the general counsel for it. And so, yes, you have a good part of the business team assembled.
Mm-hmm. But what's interesting to me is that you brought up the context of like, hold on, I need some foreplay. That, except the revert, like that dynamic of like social then business or business then social, regardless of whether you're at a game. Like it took me a while to pick this up, but my the woman who does a lot of my scheduling, my bookkeeping, and just helps me in all kinds of ways in my business. It took me a little while to figure this out, but I realized that if I want to ask her about her weekend or touch back on something we've talked about before, if we do that first, she gets really angsty. Like, and I can feel her like, come on, we got stuff we got to do. She's a person who wants to check all the boxes, and then she would love to talk about, like, you know, to kind of connect and hear what's going on. But for her, that comes later. Whereas I know some other people I've discerned over a while, they prefer to kind of connect a little bit and then, like, you know, check the boxes.
Well,
and
actually,
see.
It was very funny because we brought on a new executive assistant, as you know, and I'd watched, she's been here for about 6 weeks or so, and I'd watched what was happening when, because I get here first. She gets here generally second, about 8:45 or whatever, and Kim will walk in around 9:15 or something. So I've watched as Kim walks in, and Sheila will immediately, as Kim passes her desk, say, Kim, okay, so, and dive into something that has to happen. And I know Kim. We've worked together for over a decade. And so I spoke to Kim about this, and then I went to Sheila, and I was like, this is what I noticed, and let me tell you what I learned with over 10 years of working with Kim. And I wanted to make sure to say that Kim wasn't complaining about her.
Right.
But
like,
this
I've
is just what I've noticed. You need to let Kim put her stuff down, take off her coat, get her tea, and just give her, I'm not saying that you can't talk to her before noon.
Right.
I'm just saying give her like 10, 12 good minutes. And then you can dive into whatever it is on the day. But, and so we were laughing about that because Sheila's like, well, I'm up at 5 and I've already done Pilates, and I come in here early and you and I have talked and I'm already moving. And
as a fellow super morning person, like, I have picked up my phone to call people at, you know, and then I realized, thank goodness, that, you know, it's like 7 o'clock. I was like, maybe I should wait like a little bit longer. But we did a whole episode on this, like the care and feeding of people. And so, but there's two pieces here, because a lot of what we're talking about aren't necessarily the moments where you have these like deep ongoing relationships, like people who are in the office every day. I mean, that example, and with my assistant, it is, but these are the, like, I'm at a game, or I'm at an event, or, you know, wherever it is that these sort of, or Thanksgiving, where these things can come up. And there really are two pieces to it. One, you know, the more any of us can learn to read other people's social cues is never a bad thing. Like, the just being able, I'm stunned sometimes at how people don't pick up on other people's social cues, like where they're talking and everyone in the room is doing the large, slow shake of their head, which is like the universal sign of, we get it, you can stop talking now. And they just keep talking. I get like physically angsty. I'm like, can you not see the room? So being able to read and notice people's feedback, which is how you learned that. I mean, I'm sure Kim never came in and said, Elliot, you know, what I'm going to need is for you to give me, you know, let me take my coat off. You've just come to realize that if you pounce in the first 10, 12 minutes, you don't get the best Kim. Right. So there's like stimulus and response. But I also think that no matter what, there are, for better, for worse, always going to be people who do not read social cues. And because here's my thought. If I pounced on you with a conversation at a Ravens game, I bet you, and you were feeling the way you were this week, I would have seen it on your face. You would have seen it halfway through my sentence. I would have been like, "Oh, like you." I'll tell you what. I will rap back to you this tomorrow. But not everybody's going to read people that well, and so I do think we all need. But because I do get genuinely a little freaked out by how often I hear somebody, you know, make up a huge judgment around someone else. And it feels like something that I don't think is like your everyday normal etiquette rule of, everybody should know that. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure that's just your rule. Like you made that, like that is not a rule that we're all supposed to know. So I do think we have to all take responsibility for our own.
No, I think so. But I think that the topic comes out, and I said Thanksgiving, but what I was really thinking about as you were talking were the holiday parties, because you're coming up on holiday parties,
gotcha.
And you've got, and I've seen this dynamic, I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have in holiday parties where it's a business, like you said, there's a fence around it, it's business. At the same time, there's a social aspect, maybe spouses are there, maybe families are there, however you do it. And sometimes if you're the owner, if you're some, higher up in the company, so you have direct reports, et cetera, you don't necessarily want to be approached all the time by people talking about, their goals and what's going on. Right. And let me just grab you. Can I grab you for a second or whatever? And if you're somebody who's looking up at the people that you want to touch base with, hey, this is a more relaxed moment. You don't have to make an appointment to go into her office and talk to her. You can kind of, maybe I can see her casually go up to her as she's, hanging around here and just talk to her, kind of mention my interest in this new position, whatever it is. So there's this whole undercurrent of what you can discuss, what you can't discuss, how you approach people, and how you let people know that here you really just want to focus on the social stuff and you don't want to get into it without being off-putting.
Yeah, well, see, but that now harkens back to the Just Say That episode. I would so much rather us, because I can think of circumstances where I would not want someone to use that moment to come talk to me about a thing that they've been wanting to, because I just want to be there in the moment and socialize and touch base with people or whatever. I can also imagine a scenario where I would be really, really, really happy that somebody felt more comfortable in that environment to come talk to me about a thing that they haven't been able, because I know those moments, like sometimes saying like, can I talk to you in the conference room, just feels like it makes way too big of a deal formal, about a thing. Yes, and it's like, it doesn't really rise to the occasion of can I get a personal conversation in the conference room? It's like, I do want to talk about a thing. I do need a closed door, but that feels like overblown. So I guess for me, I never want to make up a bunch of rules or decide that there are things. That's why I love so much if we can all just like develop skills to be like, that's like, I love that you want to talk to me about this. I cannot wait to talk to you about this. It's really important to me. And I'm so glad you brought it up. Today, I'm just kind of feeling the Christmas vibe, or you know what? I just pounded a Jell-O shot.
Yes.
And I don't feel comfortable. I'm being silly now, but like having the skills to communicate what's really true. That's to me. I wrote down this word honesty a little bit ago, because if in every example we used, the honest truth is like, I don't want you to not talk to me about things. I don't want you to feel like you can't come up to me at a Ravens game, but I just, in this moment, I don't have, I don't want to do that, or I don't like, so the honest piece of it, if you can just communicate the honesty of it, I think it gets you out of, that to me feels like a better solution than trying to decide what the rules are.
No, I agree. And so what I take from that is the plan A, which really goes to just say that, which is I'm not in that place, et cetera, et cetera. But plan B, and I'm really going to cling to this like a 3-year-old in a storm, and that is, I just pounded a Jell-O shot. I really think that's going to be, with apologies, a plan A. That's my go-to.
Well, it's going to be particularly interesting if there aren't Jell-O shots served there.
Irrelevant.
Fair enough.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
You
can find links to that group, as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email, and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of
Lovingly
ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us. Which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.